freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's WGC Dell Technologies match play. And boy, is it a doozy. Joining me to break it all down, Sia Nejad is here. Happy Nowruz, Sia.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow, you
that?
are on top of it. Good
Come
for
on,
you.
dude.
So, yeah, exactly. Of course you would be, of all people.
That's right.
Rick, thank you very much. And I got to say, so Rick, I don't think you're going to like this, but you're also kind of going to like it. So I'm not as big on match play as you are in terms of preserving it year after year after year. And I have a couple reasons that might not even be real good reasons. However, when I see brackets come out, I change my tune real quick. And maybe, okay, so is that really why? Is that what this comes down to for you?
Well, I like match. I think in general, golf, most places outside like the professional ranks is played in match play, right? Like if I went and played against my buddies, we would probably play some form of match play, which I think it just has such a great place in the game. But when you put anything in a bracket, right? I mean, America loves brackets, and you could put anything in a bracket. And I'm actually, they do a good job with this format with, trying to take something as crazy as golf and putting it into a format like this. So yeah, I mean, the bracket for me just takes it to a whole nother level.
No, that's a completely fair point. And so the reason I think it's maybe, I think it's a little too taxing on the golfers. And obviously there's a huge...
I know. I feel so horrible for them.
Well, listen, and there's a huge prize pool at the end of the rainbow here, but 7 rounds potentially, or I shouldn't say 7 rounds, 7 matches, and however many rounds that would end up being, that's a lot. I don't know. I think of guys like Will Zalatoris or Fitzpatrick or Hideki Matsuyama who potentially, I mean, Will Zalatoris is well past his injury, but there's some guys with these lingering injuries. Maybe that's just a built-in advantage for us in DFS and in the brackets themselves. But I think that's the problem I have with it. It just seems like a lot. I just wonder what the player perspective is coming into these terms as opposed to mine.
Yeah, I mean, they probably hate it, right? I mean, it's like a lot of golf. I get it. It's, it's a gift and a curse, right? The deeper you go, the more you have to play, but it's the deeper you are. So we'll see. I am under the impression that for this week's one and done, the link is in the description, although the chat does not necessarily agree with that. So if the link is not in the description as of right now to get your vote in for the match play one and done, I'm sure Troy will have it in there within moments. So refresh and try again. And if you're watching this not live, you're watching it on demand, I'm sure it'll be there for you. We must also point out, Sia, that this is technically another elevated event. So it's $20 million in the purse. It does create generally a more volatile situation because match play is kind of wacky and crazy and all over the place. So there will be some pretty fun decisions to be made in one and done this week.
Well, so that's the thing is like I said about the pot at the end. What is it? This is another $4.5 million or $4 million to the winner?
I believe it's a 3.6. I'll have to confirm that, but something like that.
Which is an insane amount of money. I mean, I believe that would still be more than the 4 majors, right? I'm sorry for giving you the sort of the research quiz here, but it is a tremendous amount. So the question becomes, do you want to risk a top guy in the one and done, knowing that your top guy, because of just circumstances of other guys in his group really playing well, he might not even get out of the group, let alone get to the grade 8 or the final 4. So it's a really kind of a tough situation to grab one of your elite guys, but it's so much money that maybe you just want to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, 3.6 million up top. The purse is 20 million. We won't officially know the major purses until those weeks, but 20 million would be more than what the majors were last year. So keep that in mind. Troy, if you could share my screen, I've got a bracket here. Thank you very much. So here's the bracket that I filled out. I just threw it in Google Docs like I've been doing for the last couple of years, Sia, just to kind of keep track of everything. And before we will go group by group through this and talk about some names, but let's talk about the format. So Monday morning, the names were drawn. The top 16 seeds are all in their own group. So they get their own group. And then there are B players, C players, and D players that are randomly drawn to fill out the rest of these groups. So every single group has an A player, a B player, a C player, and a D player. They will play round robin against one another, 1 round on Wednesday, 1 round on Thursday, 1 round on Friday. And then the winner of each group will advance to the Sweet 16. Then it'll go to single elimination. So Sia, this is actually a newer format. They started doing this in 2015. It used to just be straight up single elimination, which is wild, but talk about guys who don't want to travel and spend a lot of money and get there and play 15 holes because they got boat raced and have to go home. This guarantees everybody 3 rounds.
Exactly. So a lot of those guys, these big time names that we see, like let's say at the top of Group 1 and Group 2, we don't want them going home because they had 1 bad round, right? So they get to stick around for 3. It's a really good format. And as far as, I don't want to go back to the taxing thing. I think there's ways to maybe make the first few rounds maybe a little shorter. It's just something to think about. But at the end of the day, what's interesting here is you're talking about B, C, and D players. And a lot of these guys, they got a tough draw because, quote, some of these C and D players, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, this is based on OWGR, right? And we know how, right? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And we know how slow the OWGR is to catch up to, and it's not a knock on the OWGR, but it's not really accounting for who's really been hot over the last 24, 36, even 50 rounds because the turnover takes some time there. So for example, like that Jon Rahm group, that's pretty gross for Jon Rahm. He gets Billy Horschel, who's good here, but he hasn't been playing well. But then Keith Mitchell and Ricky Fowler in the same group. There's a lot of tough groups. I think Scotty Scheffler got a kind of a tough draw. I think Jordan Spieth got kind of a tough draw. Sam Burns. There's a lot of Morikawa is another one. There's a lot of tough groups here, and it's predicated on these quote C and D players that right now might be B players.
Yeah, so we'll go through each one of these groups. We'll talk about who we think has the best chance of coming out. But the real key here, Sia, this is our DFS show. So if you're making DFS lineups, there is really only one way to do this. You have to give yourself clean paths to getting golfers as far as you can. So, for example, the cardinal sin you could commit choosing 2 golfers out of the same group. Here, we'll take this example up here in the upper right-hand quadrant. Group 2, Jon Rahm and Billy Horschel. There is no planet in which you should have both of those guys in the same lineup. The idea being that only one of them is going to be able to get out of the group. You should also not include anyone from the neighboring group, which for Group 2 would be Group 15, because if they did get out of their group, they would immediately run into each other in the Sweet 16. So you need to give yourself 6 clear paths to the Elite 8 without your golfers running into each other. And then ideally 4 clear paths to the final 4. It is the only way to build lineups. And it is the one massive built-in edge to this format because we're going to get 25 to 35% of the lineups that are going to be built incorrectly and are probably going to end up being donations this week.
Yeah, and a way to do that, and I know, Rick, on your site, you kind of have built-in rules, which is super helpful. But if you're hand building and you just are intimidated by that kind of stuff, just think of the concept. You want your team of 6 to survive and advance as long as possible. So again, you don't want guys from the same group. You don't want guys from adjacent groups necessarily because of what that's going to mean in terms of them surviving to the grade 8 and the final 4. So yeah, that's something that I think the industry has largely caught up to, but not everybody. And frankly, a lot of people, because this is Wednesday, or partly because this is a Wednesday start, they're kind of realizing like maybe last minute, oh shoot, I forgot to fill out my lineup, and they're just kind of putting something together, and they're not factoring in some of those issues.
Yeah, and there were a few hours where salaries were out, but the bracket wasn't out yet, and people could have built lineups without even knowing what the bracket looks like. So yeah, keep your guys away from each other for as long as possible. As Sia notes, shameless plug, I have an optimizer on rickrungood.com with the rules built in, so it will not let you build lineups that are not optimal for this week, which is really, really nice. Okay, Sia, we're gonna go through this literally group by group, talk through all the players, the guys that have a chance to make a run at this, but we are gonna pay the bills first and take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in tour championship history. We're down to the final 4.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
And we're back. All right, let's do it. Group 1, Scotty Scheffler gets the nod, the number 1 overall seed. He draws Tom Kim, Alex Noren, and Davis Riley. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the upper left-hand portion of the screen. So, Sia, is this a Scotty Scheffler runaway, or is he going to meet some resistance here?
Well, I think he's going to meet some resistance, but I think that resistance is largely going to be from Tom Kim. I mean, as good as Davis Riley was last week, that was kind of a Davis Riley course in the sense that he just seems to be really good there. I mean, I faded him last week completely, and it was mostly to my detriment. And so I don't think he's necessarily going to be good here. We know Scotty has the Texas ties. We also know he's probably the best in the world. So Scotty, I just think Tom Kim is a really good course fit. I mean, we see the approach play here and really the ball striking in general. It hasn't been as good. But I think at any given moment, and the putter hasn't been as good either, but I think at any given moment, especially on this course, which doesn't really reward long hitters very much, Tom Kim could flash for sure. And if he piles up, I don't know what his round 1 matchup because I'm not looking at it, but if he piles up a couple wins against Noren and Riley and Scheffler slips up in one of his matchups, it could be a problem for Scotty Scheffler. So he's clearly the best. I'm not going after Noren. I'm not going over after Davis Riley. If you wanted to have an upset special here, I think Tom Kim would be the guy.
Yeah, Tom Kim, it looks like they are loading the leaderboard on PGAtour.com is being loaded as we speak. It does not have everybody in here. I believe what they do is they try to have it so that the A and B matchup happens on Friday.
Third day. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
That
So I
makes
think
sense.
it's like A plays D, then A plays C, then A plays B, I believe the way it shakes out. So I'm with you here. I think it is likely that Scotty gets out of Group 1. I think that Tom Kim offers the ability to get scorching hot with the putter. We have seen him rise to the occasion in match play at the President's Cup. I think he's a fiery guy. I think it goes well when you start getting hot in this, but I think it's kind of a 2-horse race. Alex Noren, Davis Riley. Sorry, I don't think have much of a chance, but hey, it's match play. Anything can happen. Group 2, other side of the bracket. That's Jon Rahm, Billy Horschel, Keith Mitchell, Ricky Fowler. That's a tough draw for the number 2 player in the world.
Yeah, this is a classic case where that D player is really a B player now. And that of course, I'm referring to Ricky Fowler there. This is a really tough draw. I mean, obviously Rahm is the class of this group, but we could even see, as much as we like Keith Mitchell lately and Ricky Fowler, this is a Billy Horschel style format, and we could see him surprise too. So this is one of those where I'm really scared in DFS to roster Jon Rahm, because I think it's very possible he doesn't get out of Group 1. And frankly, if he gets out of Group 1, he still has to go against, we'll get there. I think Cam Young is live against Jon Rahm too. So he has 3 guys to get past in round 1. And then if he has to place a hot Cam Young, an emerging Cam Young, that's a pretty tough draw. If he gets past that, it might get a little easier for him. But here, I don't know that I'm going to roster Jon Rahm. I think I'm just going to avoid this group altogether in DFS. But I think Ricky and Rahm are my favorite 2 here.
Yeah, this is one of the worst draws. It's not, I don't think it's the worst, but you get a guy who, Ricky Fowler, much improved. The advanced metrics are outpacing his OWGR. You have Keith Mitchell, who's played great golf and has an elite skill set in driving it. You don't want to run into elite skill sets in match play. And then Billy Horschel, who has been statistically the worst player in this group, Sia, and he's a past champion. He won it 2 years ago. So, I mean, this is a gauntlet for Jon Rahm. I like kind of, if you're building, 10 or 20 lineups, kind of spreading either avoiding Group 2 altogether or spreading the wealth out here, getting access to a little bit of Ricky, a little bit of Keith Mitchell, maybe a little bit of Billy Horschel. But that is a very, very difficult group there.
I mean, just real quick, look at Group 7, Will Zalatoris. I mean, again, this is the OWGR. It's for this tournament, it's a little obsolete in my opinion. I think if Rahm could handpick the 3 guys he'd want to go against, it's probably going to be Ryan Fox, Harris English, and Andrew Putnam, not Billy Horschel, Keith Mitchell, and Ricky Fowler. It's just like it's kind of antiquated. Like I almost feel like he should have gotten his pick or something, because this seems like the toughest group to me.
Now that would be good content. The 16 guys should just draft who they play.
Amazing content.
That would be sick.
You're welcome, PGA Tour.
Group 3, Rory McIlroy's group. Rory McIlroy draws Keegan Bradley, Denny McCarthy, Scott Stallings. See ya.
Yeah, that one is tough because I actually think all four guys are live, but I think there's actually three that are definitely live, and I'm including Denny McCarthy in there because first of all, I'm certainly going to have a lean to good putters, and I think that's kind of obvious. It really puts the pressure on these guys when they know once they actually get to the green that they're going up against an elite putter, and we know that's exactly what Denny McCarthy is, but I've been pretty impressed with his ball striking as of late. We saw it at the Valspar. He gained 4.26 on approach, just under 4 ball striking in total. But there have been bouts where Denny McCarthy is really at the Genesis Invitational, where he was good on approach, but bad off the tee. But he was great off the tee at the Players and decent on approach. I think there are circumstances where Denny can get hot with the ball striking. If that happens, watch out because on this course in particular, I think he can beat anybody with a hot putter and hot ball strike.
I also think this is another tough draw for Rory. I'll write off Scott Stallings, so assume he wins the whole thing. But you don't want to get involved. The match play motto is first in wins, and when you have to go up against a very tough putter, the best putter in the world, and he's constantly burying things on you, it puts a lot of pressure on your match play opponent. You know what else puts pressure on a match play opponent? A guy like Keegan Bradley, who cares too much about anything. Right? Like Keegan takes everything so seriously and he's going to grind on you and he's a great ball striker and he's in the midst of the best stretch of his career. And Rory's like trying to figure out if he's got the right driver in the back. This is another tough draw. I lean those big three, Rory, Keegan, and Denny. I think Denny can make a pretty deep run at this thing just because of the skill set and the improvements in ball striking. But this is a very, very difficult group to come out of number 3.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite groups to have like kind of an upset special from a DFS standpoint. Because keep in mind, Denny McCarthy is only 6,900 on DraftKings, so it allows you to play a guy like Denny and then take maybe a big name like a Scotty or a Rahm, whatever. There's a ton of big names, obviously, but Denny's kind of one of my sneakier plays to get out of a group.
Group 4: Patrick Cantlay, 10,700, Brian Harman, 7,400, KH Lee, 6,400, Nick Taylor, 6,600.
I just learned last week that people still play Brian Harman. I mean, I just like, I kind of don't get it. Like, I understand the short course narrative and all that, but like, it just, I'm not looking that way. We've talked about him. It just hasn't been the same Brian Harman. I don't expect that to change during match play, specifically against the guys like Patrick Cantlay. But for me, like with each of these groups, I'm kind of choosing 2 guys that I like, the 2 guys that I would actually be willing to play. Obviously, Patrick Cantlay is one of them. And you can make an argument that Patrick Cantlay could win this thing and just coast through his quadrant. I think Nick Taylor's the other guy that I think is actually a pretty decent course fit, and he's obviously a super low price. And is he going to get past Cantlay? Probably not. But again, I'm going to have Cantlay coming out of this group. But from a DFS standpoint, if you had to take a cheap guy, I think Nick Taylor has shown the ability to pull off a few good rounds in a row, and that's what he'd need to get out of this group.
Yeah, I think Cantlay's going to boat race these guys.
Yeah, right.
And I think that he could go deep. So there's a lot here. I think Patrick Cantlay is actually one of like the most interesting golfers in this entire thing. He has a great draw here. I think his path is pretty clean for the most part for a while. I think that now that he's an equipment free agent and he's got it all figured out, he like the ball striking numbers are insane. I also think he's difficult to play against in match play because he's very deliberate. He is not going to get emotion. Like he's not going to get down or too far. Like I think he's very difficult to play in match play. The only problem I have to kind of go back to like the whole how many rounds of golf over 5 days is, he is such a routine guy. And ever since he had that back injury, he has this unbelievable, it takes him like hours to get stretched and get ready before a round. And this is like the worst week for guys like that, right? Where it's just like, he's almost going to be for 5 days straight, like in golf mode because of how much he's going to have to play, the warm up, the cool down. He's going to sleep like 2 hours a night. Like I worry. I think he's going to dominate this group, but I worry about how deep he's going to be able to go after that.
That's an interesting point. I'll be honest, I didn't know that about Patrick Cantlay, that it's just a very deliberate, he's sort of deliberate off the course as well with those types of things. But you're right. The path is pretty clear for him. I mean, when you look to like the second round and you even look to the grade 8, especially if guys like Max Homer or Jordan Spieth, maybe Shane Lowry, if some of those guys get knocked off, which is certainly possible. I mean, he really has to get past maybe like a Sam Burns or a Scott or a Hadwin, and then he might have a layup going towards the Final Four. So, I mean, he definitely, you said clean. He definitely has one of the cleaner paths for sure.
Group 5 is a group that whoever comes out of Group 4 could eventually run into. We're still in the bottom left-hand quadrant if you're watching on YouTube. That's Max Homa, Hideki Matsuyama, Kevin Kisner, Justin Suh. Kind of a lot to unwrap here, Sia. What do you see?
This is interesting because obviously people are going to look at Kisner and be like, even when he's playing poorly, he plays well here, which is 100% true. I don't think I'm going to go there with Kisner. So for me, it's going to be Homa. I really like Homa in this tournament in general. Speaking of clean paths, I mean, if you're going to make the argument about Patrick Cantlay, you can certainly make it about Max Homa as well in terms of his path to getting the Final Four. There's probably only maybe one or two giant roadblocks he'll meet along the way. So I'm out on Kisner. I'm in on Homa. If I was going to go with somebody else, speaking of good putters, and I maligned this guy last week with the putter, which was just my mistake. Justin Suh is a good putter. And I mentioned last week that I didn't have faith in him when it comes to the putter, but that was just really one tournament I was focused upon. He's been really good with the putter, and that's another thing I'm looking more for here versus really any other tournament, any other week.
Justin Suh's, I think he's a little bit dangerous. I think he's playing well. You mentioned the putting. He's headed in the right direction. I think that Max Homa might win this golf tournament. Might win the whole thing. I mean, he's well rounded. He's playing at a high level. He is even keel, and he's got a great caddy on the bag. And it's a pretty, you look at this draw. So what I did was I removed the top player, Sia, from each one of these groups and just looked at like the other three guys, what that draw looks like. Yeah. And in the last 36 rounds, the combination of Hideki, Kevin Kisner, Justin Suh, that's a tour average player. So it is basically the second best draw. We still have one other better draw coming, but Max Homa got one of the better draws we could have gotten here to get out of his group.
Well, no question. When you're getting Hideki Matsuyama as an 18 seed, and we know he's not playing like that, then you know it's going to be a built-in good draw there. But then you get Kisner, who's good here, but really has been quite bad as of late, which you just showed us on YouTube. And then Justin Suh, I think he has some upside. But yeah, Justin Suh against Max Homa, I'm pretty much going to take Max Homa 9 out of 10 times there as well.
Back to the other side of the board, Group 6. That's Xander Schauffele, Tom Hoge, Aaron Wise, Cam Davis. This is a pretty fascinating one. I could find three guys out of this group for sure.
Well, especially because for me, like I'm not ever really huge on Xander Schauffele. I'm usually kind of looking to fade him, even though I obviously think he's a great golfer. But there's guys in this region. Tom Hoge, I think, is really interesting. I think he'll be a popular contrarian play because we know how good he is on approach, but also just the shorter nature of this course, I think, is probably going to help him out. I mean, that Players Championship, T3, he gains almost 9 strokes on approach. That's just obnoxious. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, the ability to get hot, the ability to go low, the ability to rattle off a bunch of, like, that's super valuable here. Even if you're offsetting it with a double or it doesn't matter. It's match play. Like, get hot, make a bunch of birdies. Tom Hoge can do that. The other one, and bear with me here because I know this might be a little bit ugly, but Cam Davis is here.
No, I agree with you here, by the way.
Right. So, the really ugly 5 missed cuts in a row, but then he tells us, yeah, I was sick. I wasn't feeling myself. I'm feeling great now, yada, yada, yada. And that aligns with the T6 at the Players Championship, in which the stat line was much better. We know if we just reset everybody back to their 100 round baseline, Cam Davis is always really interesting. He has that President's Cup experience where he played pretty well. And this group to me is wide open. Aaron Wise, I wish was playing better. He's not. Cam Davis is 6,600. If people are going to opt for either Xander or they're going to find a darling in Tom Hoge, like, give me Cam Davis at 6,600 to come out of this group.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be different if Cam Davis was in a different group. But I definitely think he has, especially with some of the upside that I shouldn't say upside, with some of what we saw recently from him and knowing the history, I definitely think Cam Davis is live to win this group.
Group 7, back to that upper right-hand quadrant. This is Rahm's region. Will Zalatoris, Ryan Fox, Harris English, Andrew Putnam. I think, Sia, you said if Will Zalatoris could hand pick 3 guys, he would pick these 3. So I think we know where you might be going here.
Yeah, well, Will Zalatoris is interesting to me on a different level too, because has recently had what we thought was going to be a pretty bad back injury, and this is kind of where, again, I'm kind of going down like the MD road here, which I shouldn't be, but it's just one of those things where Will Zalatoris really wants to play like 7 matches over what I guess it's 5 days. It seems like a stretch to me, but he is clearly the talent of this group. And I don't really see it. I mean, Harris English, I think, is at least interesting to talk about because he's flashed some of the upside that we saw from Harris English, I don't know, like 3 years ago. But when it comes to Ryan Fox and Putnam, I think Ryan Fox is emerging, but he is not the caliber of Will Zalatoris. So for me, it's Will Zalatoris, and it's maybe a contrarian play on Harris English.
Yeah, it's either Will or I probably like Ryan Fox more than you do. He's got a bunch of decent finishes in a row worldwide. He finished T14 at the API, T21 at the Players Championship. I do also think, I talked about this a little bit. When match play is so different, like you have to stand there and watch your opponent and you are playing against him, right? And when you have to play against someone who has something elite, it stinks, whether it's the putter or Jordan Spieth's chipping in on you constantly, or Ryan Fox is hitting it like a million miles further than you are, and you have to play first into every single green. Like, I just think that's annoying, and I think it wears guys in match play. And I definitely think Zalatoris is the class of this, but Ryan Fox offers at $7,000 a little bit of excitement that I could probably get behind.
Certainly an interesting contrarian play, which I don't hate. I'm not going to do it, but I don't hate it.
Back to the other side of the board, Group 8, Viktor Hovland, Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, Matt Kuchar. Ooh, interesting. What do you want to do?
This is a great group. I think this is another one of those just really challenging groups where it's hard to pick a winner. I'm going to pick Viktor Hovland out of this group, and he probably will be featured on a couple of my DraftKings teams. But I like Chris Kirk at this tournament. I mean, not historically necessarily, but I think he's a good course fit. We know he's coming in with great form. And then Siwoo Kim and Matt Kuchar aren't any pushovers either, especially Matt Kuchar in match play. So this is a really tough group. I expect Viktor Hovland to emerge out of it, but this is one of those from a DFS standpoint. It's hard to justify taking Viktor Hovland because his competition is so great.
Yeah, this is statistically the 4th worst draw because it's talented, and that doesn't even really account for how great Kuchar has been in match play. It's all just kind of recent stuff. And Siwoo's like the perfect match play guy. It's just like get hot, throw it all, hit a couple in the water and only lose one hole. And you know what I mean? Like that, he's perfect for this, and he's putting better with that broomstick now. And we saw him play well. I think he was the leading point scorer for the International President's Cup team. This is a pretty tough draw. I love statistically what kind of all these guys offer. So for me, if I'm building a bunch of lineups or 10 lineups, I'm kind of spreading the wealth here. But unfortunately, I think Viktor got a tough one.
You think this is a group to avoid largely from a DFS standpoint, knowing you can only pick 6 guys?
That's kind of the interesting thing is you could just like avoid groups,
yeah.
Right? I mean, which we'll see what that ownership looks like kind of moving forward. But yeah, I'm not sprinting to get access to Group 8, especially because if you look ahead, we'll talk about Group 9 in a second. Like Group 9's a tough draw too. It's also the Scotty Scheffler side of things. Like it's just kind of, we talk about clean paths. It's not really the cleanest path in the world. Yeah. All right. We're going to continue this conversation. We'll do the other 8 groups, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. So before we jump right back into this, a couple things, Sia. So we're kind of, looking at this bracket. So statistically, at least for the last 36 rounds, Group 8 is the 4th most difficult draw. Group 9, which we're going to talk about in a second, is the worst draw for Colin Morikawa. That is also like we were saying, the Scotty Scheffler region. So all this stuff starts adding up over time. You have to consider it. The other thing to consider is it's really easy when you're filling out your bracket to say, obviously Scotty Scheffler is going to win. Obviously Colin Morikawa. Obviously Viktor Hovland. Obviously Max Homa. Last year we tied a record where 8 top seeds got out of their group. 8. So half. Since we've gone to this format, we have seen as little as 1 top seed get out. 2021. John Rahm was the only guy that got out of his group. And overall, only 33% of the top seeds have actually advanced. So when you're filling out your bracket, while it's easy to click the top name, there has been a lot of churn.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if, because we've had this discussion last year when some of the live guys left, do we think that percentage is going to shoot up a little bit because some of those middle to upper tier guys are gone?
I do. Yeah. So in the same way that like high end and chalky guys are winning more often, I also believe that we could skew towards that high side, right? Like the record's 8. Like if we go out and get 7 or 8 again, I think that would be skewing towards the high side. That would be well above the average since we've gone to this format. Even if we got 6 of the top seeds out, I would say, wow, that's on the higher end of things. But I do think we are going to start skewing that way because, yeah, that soft middle tier or that middle tier of betting boards and of the OWGR has gotten softer for sure.
For sure.
Group 9, statistically the most difficult group. Colin Morikawa, Jason Day, Adam Svensson, Victor Perez. That, if you want to name it, could be considered the group of death.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with group 2 there with Rahm, Horschel, Mitchell, and Fowler, but this is an excellent group. I mean, I certainly think this is up there for sure. I don't, this is a quadrant where from a DFS standpoint, I kind of want to avoid. So, I mean, obviously I'm going to take somebody from this quadrant, but this is one where do I just make the call on Scotty Scheffler to go through and I sort of fix my DFS team to kind of largely avoid this quadrant? I'm not really sure because it's really hard to make an argument for Colin Morikawa here when I have Jason Day sitting right next to him and Adam Svensson, who's really emerging, and Victor Perez, who, Rick, you talked about last week, who's a guy that at least can win a couple of these matches potentially. So for me, it's probably Jason Day, and I'll call it a day. So I don't think I'm going to end up taking Colin Morikawa, but I also think I might avoid this group as well.
Yeah, Colin Morikawa seems like the guy least likely to get out of his group. I mean, he of course he can just take over here, but like, what if the putter goes cold? It's going to be a tough out. And Victor Perez being the quote worst guy in the group is tough. Svensson just won the RSM. Svensson's getting back to the stuff that we love about him, the ball striking numbers. Jason Day statistically last 36 rounds. It's the big 3, Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and Jason Day's the only other guy gaining 2 strokes per round over the last 36 of everybody in this field. I mean, he's been phenomenal. So this group is just jam-packed with talent. So what I will probably do is take an opportunity to avoid Colin and then probably – I mean, Svensson at 6,700 is very interesting. Victor Perez at 65, very interesting because you could get a situation where, if Svensson gets out of this group, and as long as Victor doesn't get out of group 8, like he's pretty much a toss-up or a favorite against anybody in the Sweet 16, Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, Matt Kuchar. I'd feel confident about him against any of those guys. So you could see a pretty deep run from whoever comes out of group 9, I think has a pretty clean path to into the Elite 8 until they have to run into the top half.
Yeah, and that's all the more reason, actually, from a DFS standpoint, to maybe, again, if you're making multiple lineups, which I think everybody does at this point, to maybe play Colin Morikawa. Because I think from an ownership standpoint, when it comes to these top seeds, or when I say top seed, I maybe like a top 10 seeded player, I think Colin Morikawa is going to carry some pretty low ownership because of all the reasons we just stated in the last couple of minutes. So given that there could be a clear path for a guy like an Adam Svensson, for example, or Jason Day, well, the same could be true for Colin Morikawa, who we know could potentially recapture his form all around. And potentially maybe he doesn't even meet Scotty Scheffler in the final 8 and gets to the final 4. I could see that path. It's not something I think is super likely, but from a contrarian DFS standpoint, he might be your guy.
Group 10. Tony Finau, Kurt Kitayama, Adrian Meronk, Christian Bezuidenhout. I got one guy here. I got one guy I want out of this group.
Well, I'm going to guess that is it Kurt Kitayama?
Hell yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
There you go. I mean, I certainly like the price on him too. I like it.
Listen, I love Tony Finau, but I think that there are guys made for match play and there are guys that are not made for match play. And the good news for Tony is there's like only one match play event a year, and that's going away seemingly. So you're going to have a lot of great opportunities, but man, I want a dog in match play. I want Kurt Kitayama. I want Kurt Kitayama who stares down everybody at Bay Hill. I want Kurt Kitayama who doesn't back up at the CJ Cup, who goes at it at the Scottish Show. Like I want Kurt, because I know he's gonna go out there and stick it to these guys. I think Tony's too nice for match play, quite honestly.
Well, he certainly has that demeanor that to potentially kind of float through match play and not lock in like some of these guys. I think Kitayama is a really interesting play too, because if Will Zalatoris stumbles in round one and doesn't get out of group one, then Kitayama potentially gets, it's not a layup because it's still Kurt Kitayama at the end of the day, but he potentially gets to the grade 8 reasonably easily, at least relative to other people who are getting to the Sweet 16. And then who knows, maybe John Rahm stumbles, maybe Cameron Young stumbles, and there's a path for Kurt Kitayama to make it to the Final Four. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. API winner Kurt Kitayama to make it to the Final Four. Group 11 here. Matt Fitzpatrick, Sahith Theegala, Minwoo Lee, JJ Spaun. Level of concern for Matt Fitzpatrick and the ailing neck injury that he's been transparent about with 7 rounds in 5 days.
Yeah, he's my least favorite guy in this group, to be honest with you. I mean, we talked about fading him last week. We've been fading him. I think we've kind of both been fading him for a while, but I'm concerned about the injury. Like, again, we try to play doctor to the best we can, and that isn't very good, obviously. But like, there are obvious signs to me that Matt Fitzpatrick maybe shouldn't even be playing in this tournament, given how taxing it might be if he actually advances. But I just don't think he's going to advance. So for me, coming off 2 missed cuts, really not being impressive for quite some time. I mean, I absolutely love Sahith Theegala. I mean, he's a guy I'm probably going to have going very far as far as sleepers are concerned. And I don't know that Sahith is a sleeper per se, especially in this particular group. But in terms of getting a guy that's like 8K or less to potentially advance to like the Final Four, Sahith is extremely high on that list, if not the top of that list.
Yeah, both these guys, Sahith and Minwoo Lee. I mean, they are 2 dynamic, high upside, streaky, birdie in bunches types of guys, right? These are the volatile guys that you want to be investing in this format. And, we're seeing it on the screen right now where, it's whack-a-mole with Sahith and it's all over the place. That's good here. And when you are in a group where your top seed has questions about his form, mostly related to the injury, like this is open season. Sahith and Minwoo, they're licking their chops at starting this thing, man. I'm really excited to see how these guys go out. And then JJ Spaun, I just, maybe he shocks the world, but that would be pretty tough to see him get out of here.
Well, I'll say this about Spaun. We've seen him, man, the ball striking has been really bad over the last, 6 tournaments, really for quite some time. But we've seen him, especially on this course, like I think he could be pretty good. And because Matt Fitzpatrick is at the top of this group, and because there is volatility, which can go bad too with Minwoo Lee and Sahith Theegala, if you were to take an extremely contrarian play in your DFS lineup because you wanted to save some money, I mean, at a flat 6K, I think you could do worse than JJ Spaun. But yeah, I agree with you. It's probably Minwoo or Sahith here. I think all 3 of these guys, and I'm including JJ Spaun with the 3, I think they're getting a break by getting Matt Fitzpatrick in their group right now.
Group 12, Jordan Spieth, the Spieth group with Shane Lowry, Taylor Montgomery, Mackenzie Hughes. I really like Spieth and I love him in like match. Anything that's like not just like standard golf, Jordan Spieth's the best at, right? Just like match play and being weird and being creative and like all that stuff he's awesome at. It's not a good draw. Shane Lowry's got a ton of match play experience. The other 2 guys can roll the rock and just get hot with the putt. They might just roll in 150 feet of putts in 12 holes and boat race you. So I still think it's Spieth that gets out of this, but that is with little confidence. I say that.
Yeah, and it should be. I like how Spieth is playing. I played him a lot in DraftKings, and it really paid off. Rick, I almost had an outright. It was a 2,000-person tournament. I came in second place because Taylor Moore ended up winning. I had Fleetwood, I had Spieth, and I had Shank in the lineup.
Sick.
And I just the only thing I needed was one of those three guys to win. And then all of a sudden, Taylor Moore is at the top of the leaderboard. But it was a nice payoff and all that stuff. And I really like Spieth's game. I really like the approach play has been awesome. We knew he was probably going to club down and keep it in the fairway at the Valspar. I think he's going to be very strategic at this course as well. I like him, but yeah, you're right. I mean, honestly, I tend to defer towards Lowry in this one. And as much as I've been fading Taylor Montgomery over really the last like 2 months, I've been fading him in matchups betting wise too. I have seen some spurts where Taylor Montgomery's actually like ball striking it okay. And we know the putter is so good with him. So he worries me. Mackenzie Hughes doesn't worry me quite as much, but Taylor Montgomery definitely worries me. So this is one of those groups where I think I'm largely going to avoid, especially because I like Max Homa so much in the adjacent group.
Yeah, like Taylor Montgomery, the last time we saw him was the Players' Championship. He gained 8 strokes putting. What happens if he just gains 3 strokes putting in a round? Like you're just that there's so much luck involved in match play. And if you just get on the wrong side of someone hooping a bunch of 35 footers on you, like you're kind of cooked. And Montgomery is one of the most likely guys to make like 5 35 footers in the same round.
That's right. And honestly, the off the tee numbers have actually been borderline impressive if you go back like 8 or 9 tournaments.
He's going to be an annoying match play guy. He hits it far and putts well. That's such an annoying match play guy.
It's not where you want to be.
It's really not where you want to be. That's good.
You hit it to like 12 feet. He hits it to 15. You don't have the advantage there.
Yeah, and now he makes it and puts your 12-footer is required.
Right.
It's a tough place to be. Group 13. I think it's wide open. Sam Burns, Seamus Power, Adam Scott, Adam Hadwin. I can make a case for all of them. I mean, flip a 4-sided coin. This is wide open.
It's wide open. If you're looking at it from a pure upside standpoint, and this is an obvious statement, but when I say upside, I'm not talking about just getting out of the group. I'm talking about knocking out a guy like Patrick Cantlay, who a lot of people are going to have advancing. He's going to be really popular in DraftKings. I think Sam Burns is that guy because I think maybe we're starting to see him recapture sort of the Sam Burns form. We saw it a little bit at the Valspar, and that Sunday from him was pretty awesome considering the circumstances he was golfing in. So I think Sam Burns is a guy that I don't normally play. I love him in this format. I love the form that we're starting to see, but we haven't fully seen. And the fact that we haven't fully seen it means people are going to still be tentative to play him. I think you could have a DFS lineup with Sam Burns, and in that lineup, you're hoping he knocks out Cantlay too, and then you're really on your way to a good lineup.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to, so I think Group 13 it's going to offer a lot of leverage, right? Because it is so wide open, and because most people will assume that Patrick Cantlay gets out of Group 4, which is certainly not a given. That if you get the right guy out of 13, it could be a pretty deep run, right? I mean, Seamus Power has the 2 skills that you like in match play, approach play, and putting. Sam Burns, I agree with you. I think it's trending in the right direction. Adam Hadwin had 1 bad round last week and kind of cost him outside of that. I mean, he can get hot with the putter. He can get hot on approach. So yeah, 13, I think, is like your X factor slate breaker type group there that can really make a lot of noise.
Absolutely. I think that's true for 13. I think it's true for a group we recently talked about, which is Group 11. And I think you need to consider that when you are filling out your DFS lineup. Like, what are people going to do, and where can I buck that trend? I think guys like Sam Burns, Adam Scott, Adam Hadwin in particular, I'm not as big on power for this one in this particular group, but all of those guys could do some damage here.
Group 14, Terrell Hatton, Russell Henley, Lucas Herbert, Ben Griffin. I imagine most will invest in Hatton. He's been phenomenal. Is there a case to be made for anybody else?
No, there isn't. The one thing I'll caution is because people are probably going to see that the first group that Terrell Hatton is in, they know how good he's been playing. If you roster him, just know that there's a good chance that a lot of other people are going to roster him as well. Although his second round matchup potentially against Rory, that doesn't look super great. But I think Hatton's going to be a pretty popular play, I'm guessing, in spite of the fact that second round draw isn't great.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of an argument there. I wish I like Ben Griffin's stat profile a little bit. I wish it was kind of a little bit different. It's getting a little shakier as we go on. Herbert can putt well, but we've seen him just hemorrhage strokes all over the place. And I don't know if I have much confidence in Russell Henley. So it's probably Hatton or nobody for me out of group 14. 15. Where are you? 15. Here you go. All right. Here's the one here, right? So this is the Cam Young group. It's Cam Young, Sepp Straka, Corey Connors, Davis Thompson. Cam Young, I think, can win the whole thing. I think he'll be popular. I will also note that when I did my draw analysis of just the other three in every single group, the second best group was Homa's group. Those guys were tour average 0.00 in the last 36 rounds. Corey Connors, Davis Thompson, Sepp Straka are actually losing strokes to the field in the last 36 rounds. That is the only group that you can say that about. So this is seemingly by far the best possible draw for any top seed, and Cam Young got it.
So Cam Young, the 15 overall seed, gets those three guys, and John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler get who they got. That's pretty staggering. Yeah, I like Cam Young. I think he is going to be popular. I mean, there is an argument to be made that if you're taking him in DraftKings, of course, he could get John Rahm in the second round. But I think the argument you're making for Cameron Young is, well, he could probably get past Group 1 and John Rahm. That's certainly possible. But also that John Rahm's group is so difficult, it might not be John Rahm emerging from that. And so you get Cameron Young with the kind of some layups in the first group. And then, who does he get? Keith Mitchell, maybe Billy Horschel, Ricky Fowler in the second round. I mean, that's a pretty great path to getting to the Elite Eight. So Cameron Young makes a lot of sense. He's probably going to be very, very popular, something to keep in mind because this is golf at the end of the day. It's nothing is automatic, but yeah, Cameron Young has a really nice path.
It's well warranted. He has an elite driver. He hits it far. He's the fourth best birdie maker in the field over the last 50 rounds. He is not even putting all that well. He's got Paul Tesori on the bag for the first time. Webb Simpson's old caddy. He's going to be popular. It's going to be well warranted.
Yeah.
Finally, Group 16. This is the group that would run immediately into the Scotty Scheffler group. Sung Jae Im, Tommy Fleetwood, JT Poston, Mav McNeely. It's another pretty stout group.
I have a question for you on Tommy Fleetwood because I think, normally I don't generalize like this, but I think there's a clutch gene that's just kind of missing with Tommy Fleetwood. And I think that's been the rhetoric on him, which predated the last couple of weeks. But the point I'm making is I didn't buy into that rhetoric until I saw the last 2 weeks when he just really tightened up on the final round, typically on the back nine. And a lot of that can just be like coincidence and, circumstantial, but like it didn't look great. Club selection, he was short on some, he was super long on others. He was never clutch on the back nine in either of these last two tournaments. And I wonder, my question for you is this format, is it maybe actually psychologically better for him?
I do think that it is better, just do something different, right? Like just have this be different. He doesn't have to beat everyone in the field,
Exactly.
which I think feels like a big task. You just beat the guy in front of you. And he's had such great, Ryder Cup records in the past that I think that is at least a logical transition to make.
It makes sense that it would be way more intimidating to close on a Sunday when you're in a pack of 10 guys than I just got to beat this guy. I feel like the stress and the pressure of that is vastly different.
And I just have to beat him on this hole and then start a new hole next hole. And you know what I mean? It's like a mistake that you make is not nearly as detrimental in match play because it only costs you one hole at worst.
Right. And my larger point is that the mistakes will be less frequent as a result of that stress of not having a bunch of guys that are chasing you down or that you have to chase down. So I'm getting super deep into the psychology here, but I don't love the clutch gene here or the lack thereof, but I do think Fleetwood caught a nice little draw here, and it wouldn't shock me if he gets to the Elite Eight, if not beyond.
Fleetwood, Im, I think both are fine. Also, it's a little scary when you get guys who can roll it, although Poston hasn't putted as well recently. But McNeely, again, McNeely's in the same boat as Montgomery. Might just gain 8 strokes putting and steal something away from you. Okay. As we kind of zoom out and, we've gone group by group here. So I obviously think Cantlay and Homa could make a really good run here. I worry about the path that guys like even Victor and Colin Morikawa have, John Rahm as well. I think that some of the better sleepers are Keegan Bradley, I think, is really interesting. Either anybody out of Group 11 that's not named Matt Fitzpatrick, ideally Sahith Minwoo Lee. I think that Kurt Kitayama is interesting out of Group 10. Just kind of guys that I'll start building around as we get into this for the next day or so.
Yeah, I like that. And again, I think the way you have to think about this is how clear are the paths. But you also have to think about, from a DFS standpoint, what you're seeing is what everybody else is seeing as well. So can you envision a scenario? Can you play devil's advocate where, yeah, everybody's going to like that guy, but is there somebody else that you think that can contend that has a similar clear path? And usually that'll be the case. Like in every individual group, you'll have a guy like Patrick Cantlay who you love. Well, you can't really make the argument with Cantlay that Harmon, KH Lee, or Nick Taylor are going to go super far, but you can make the argument that somebody from Group 13 is going to go super far. So those are the things you need to consider when people are going to like take the Patrick Cantlays, the Cameron Youngs, and I'm going to be playing some of those guys too, but just keep all of that stuff in mind.
As we sit here right now, we think Cantlay, Cam Young, Terrell Hatton, probably the 3 most popular golfers.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then just like Scotty Scheffler because he's Scotty Scheffler.
I wonder what ends up happening with Jon Rahm, because he's got a tough group and we didn't see him last week because of, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I'm getting mixed up with the stomach flu that he had.
Oh, it was
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. It was the players. Yeah.
So, that might be kind of an out of sight, out of mind thing, because you're looking at guys like Scotty and Cantlay. Maybe people are just going to be like, that's too tough a group. I don't want to deal with it. So maybe it makes Jon Rahm an interesting, slightly contrarian play.
Okay, let's suspend logic and reason and do some narrative lineups, which I understand are very exciting for this week. So, Troy, what do we have as far as narrative lineups go? Okay, so if you are just tuning in for the first time, Sia Nejad kind of curates these, where he will ask for these narrative lineups and people will put together whatever they can come up with. So here's the Model Maniac. Says match play, gladiators in battle. Oh, okay. Maximus Homa. Solid. Will Thatcher, A Knight's Tale. I like A Knight's Tale. That's a good one.
I've never seen that.
Oh, you should go see that. There's this one weird moment. So it's like this normal good movie, and then there's this weird moment where they break the fourth wall, and it turns into like, just for like one scene, like a musical. And it's like, who greenlit this? Like, who approved this?
Okay, I'm out on A Knight's Tale. That's all I needed.
Outside of that, it's pretty good.
I'm out.
Jordan Spartacus, McKeely's Hughes, that would be Mac Hughes. Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, that would be Jon Rahm, I assume. And then Maverick McNeely, Top Gun. He doesn't have to change anything there. At Fantasy Bunker says, we're off to match play, so why not a list of things that go together? Okay, this is creative. JT and Crumpets Poston. Wow. Adrian and Yang Moronk.
Solid.
Matt Fitzpatrick and Chips. Wow. Ketchup and Sea Mustard Powers. Or Ketchup and Shea Mustard Powers.
Right.
That's good. That's good. Green Eggs and Sham Burns. Shaham Burns. That's pretty funny. And Hot and Spicy Woo Kim. Well done, Fantasy Bunker. That's very good, Ryan. Match play. This is John Markowski. Match play reminds me of March Madness. All of my brackets are broken. So let's roast some golfers to feel better. This is like a script. So John is now roasting golfers. Aaron Wise of me not to play you this week with your current form, but bump. Boom, roasted. Brian Harmon, what's the harm in playing you? My bank account. Boom, roasted.
Heyo.
Adam Hadwin, they told me you had win equity at Valspar. Nope. Boom, roasted. John Rahm, we doing this Bath Rom thing again? Oh, little tummy troubles for John Rahm. Sorry, John. Alex Noren, what has 2 thumbs and will be ignoring you this week? This guy.
Got him.
Jason Day, plan to truly contend any day now. Oh, a little backdoor J Day action. Tough scene. Well done, John Markowski. Okay. I am under the impression, Sia, that after my weeks and months of griping and belly moaning, that I am asked to try to pronounce these things that come from people's heads, usually musical or theatrical or pop culture related. And I've been throwing out the challenge. You know what? If you think you can do a better job, just record yourself and send it in. I'm under the impression someone has taken us up on that.
They took you up on that, Rick, and they relieved you of your duties. So it's pretty cool.
Let's just run it. Let's see what we got.
Hey, First Cut fam, this is Brent Harris here. I have 2 Strokes Gained narrative lineups for the 2 tournaments this week. Rick Run Good, you asked for it. Sia Nejad, thank you so much for supporting our creativity as always. All right, with the first lineup, we're going to the Dell Technology Match Play Championship. Since they might be retiring this event, since technology gets retired or retires other things all the time, here is retired stuff of the PGA Tour. First off, we have CD-ROMs. We have the Homa telephone. We have MP3 players, post-in stamps, Fox machines, and Nick Taylor-made drivers. Forgiveness. Whoops. All right. This next lineup I'm super proud of. It provides synergy with our Paramount Plus family. I give to you the Corrales Punta Cana Championship, SpongeBob's PGA Tour Reef. All right, without further ado, we got Sponge Joel Bucket Hat. We have Grayson Word. This would have been James Hahn for sure, but he's not in the tournament. We have Marky. He has the snail putting style. Patrick Star Rogers. Mr. Higgs. He's shaped just like Mr. Krabs. And instead of King Neptune, we have the true king of the windy sea, Wyndham Clark himself. Thanks so much, First Cut, for all you do. It's so much fun to be a part of this fam. Harris, over and out.
Wow. That is the hat tip. That is the golf clap. That is very, very cool. Brent Harris took me up on it. Filmed himself. Absolutely rocked it. That was cool.
That was really cool. And what was cool about it isn't just that he produced the video for both tournaments, but especially that first one. I know he liked the second one a lot, but that first one was like everything was just perfect. And then he went full Mark Immelman on the CD-ROM. Like, that was just so many like little things he incorporated there from the First Cut. I'm glad he called it family when he was addressing the whole thing, because that's how we feel about everybody that watches as well. And hopefully we can even bring more into the fold, because this is fun.
The bar has been raised. Brent, well done. Congratulations. I imagine others will be reaching out with their videos in the future, but really, really cool stuff. Yeah, that's awesome. A cool little community we've built here. Sia, is there anything else we need to touch on match play wise?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, again, make sure you go back to the beginning of this podcast that you're listening to later, but maybe watching now, and talk in and make sure you're not having too many guys in the same quadrant or in the same region, because that's going to be really important. Maybe have a bracket in front of you, and so that when you're making your lineup, or you can go on RRG and just have the rules in there and produce your teams. But if you're doing it by hand, maybe have the bracket in front of you so you can just make sure that you don't have guys going out on each other early.
Programming notes for this week. So this tournament starts on Wednesday. So we are doing the mega preview pod 1 p.m. Eastern Tuesday. Sia, we're doing the mega preview pod 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. That's less than 24 hours from right now.
I'm getting my pick in tonight. I just need to find out where I find the list of players I've already picked. Is that like on the?
It's in some of the outlines. Okay. Troy or Josh can get it for you.
Okay.
The fans' vote will be tallied at 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. That's the mega preview pod for this week. Kyle, I believe he's en route right now or en route tomorrow. Is going to try to join us from the press center. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but we got boots on the ground this week. We are also going to be doing I'll call them day by day recaps. So after Wednesday's rounds or matches are complete, we'll do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll have every single day covered along the way. And I believe those are all my announcements.
All right.
Okay. Just making sure. All right. That'll do it. Big thanks to producer Troy. Does all the hard work behind the scenes. Sia Nejad, available on Twitter at Sia Nejad. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. Catch you next time.